and fears that they fear a rapprochement with the United States more than they fear continued enmity. That they feel that their power is best secured in isolation. Now, I think part of the view from Tehran is the view from the government. But I think one thing that has been neglected over the course of the last year has been popular sentiment in Iran vis-a-vis Turkey, and the tremendous disappointment which Iranians felt when the Turkish government rushed to endorse the election results in Tehran without giving any time to waiting. And I say to my Turkish friends sometimes, if there were 3 million people who took to the streets on June 15th, last June 15th in Tehran, to peacefully, civilly protest the election results. And I pose this to my Turkish friends. How would you feel if there were a coup which took place in Turkey, in which a third of the population of Istanbul rose up peacefully to protest, and the Iranian government rushed to endorse that coup? I think there would be tremendous discontent among Turks. And I think that in Iran, Turkey is held to a higher standard than countries like China and Russia, which aren't democracies. And so there's very little expectation that China and Russia are going to come and denounce the Iranian government's abuses of democracy and human rights. But Turkey, a country which is a nascent democracy, which has overcome its own military rule, there was great disappointment that Turkey not necessarily needed to express solidarity with the Iranian people, but they really bent over backwards to endorse the election results and to call President Ahmadinejad their brother. Cengiz may not know this, but he wrote something on his Twitter account in the aftermath of the elections in which he said, my heart beats for Iran today. And he became a hero among Iranian democracy activists in the blogosphere. So I'm not saying that Prime Minister Erdogan needed to say that his heart beats for the Iranian people, but he also didn't need to call President Ahmadinejad his brother. There was somewhere in between. Let me move quickly now to the view from Washington. I have a few minutes, Steve?
You have 2.5 minutes.
Okay, very good. I think the view from Washington, I would argue, is that Turkey has relinquished its role as an honest broker. It's moved much closer to Tehran than to Washington, whether that's vis-a-vis the U.S.-Iran conflict or U.S.-Syria or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This role Turkey played up until, say, 2 years ago as kind of an honest broker, an ability to be the go-between, I think it's relinquished that role. And again, going back to the metaphor, I thought, I used to think that Turkey is to the region politically what Dubai is economically. It's a hub. It's a potential political hub for the region, and I'm afraid that they may have relinquished that role. I think that it's very problematic when the Turkish Prime Minister again embraces Ahmadinejad as his brother and says that Iran is not in pursuit of a nuclear weapon, but the Turkish president comes out on the record and says that he believes that Iran is indeed seeking a nuclear weapon. I think from Washington's vantage point, there's a certain incoherence there and maybe a lack of trust in Turkey's ability to moderate this issue. Moving forward, what are the potential flashpoints in the Turkey-Iran relationship? One thing I really learned from my recent trip to Turkey and talking to Cengiz and Omar and Soliozel and others is the fact that on the surface there appears to be great amity and great strategic cooperation between Turkey and Iran. But that hides the fact that there is going to be this, I would argue, strategic rivalry which is going to be forthcoming, because both countries are vying to be the regional hegemon. And Turkey, I think, certainly has an advantage in that it's Sunni, not Shiite. And perhaps for that reason, it has been watering the trees a bit more in order to kind of upstage Iran in terms of its presence in the region. But I think it's a delicate balance, because on one hand, it can be a zero-sum game in terms of your popularity in the Arab world, but your deteriorated relations with the Europeans in the West. The things that I would keep my eye out on in particular is Iraq. I think this can be a real point of contention between Turkey and Iran, in the sense that in the coming years, it's expected that several million barrels of oil per day are going to come out of Iraq. And I think you could make the argument that no country in the world potentially benefits from Iraq's burgeoning oil industry more than Turkey. And no country in the world stands to lose more than Iraq's burgeoning oil industry than Iran. For each $1 drop in oil prices is about $500 million lost annual revenue for Iran. So I think that could be a point of contention moving forward. I think certainly Turkey's increased role in Syria and increased amity with Syria, Iran stands to lose from that. And as we saw most recently with the flotilla crisis, Iran very meekly, after Turkey sent several flotillas, said it was going to send its own flotilla, basically as an afterthought.
Kareem, I hate to cut you off.
So yeah, I was just going to wrap up there and say looking forward to questions.
Okay, great. We are looking forward to questions. I remind you to actually ask a question when you want to ask a question, and direct it to either one or all up here. So please, by all means. Sir. Yes. Right here.
Good morning, Matt Perrin with the Joint Staff. This question is for Kareem, and it's directly related to the assumptions that Tehran is making vis-a-vis its relationship with Turkey. I was wondering if you could extrapolate in terms of what sort of discussions or debates are ongoing inside Tehran in reference to their relationship with Erdogan or in reference to their relationship with the Turkish population.
Do you want to take several, or?
We'll start out. When we get down to about 5 minutes, we'll start.
Well, I think there's overconfidence in Tehran about where Turkey is moving. That again, I think when you talk to Turkish officials, they believe that they're kind of weaning Iran in a more moderate, perhaps Western direction. And when you listen to what Iranian officials are saying, they're confident that Turkey has finally realized the wisdom of the Islamic Revolution, and the Turkish public is very interested in following the Iranian model. I didn't mention the Turkish-Brazilian diplomatic gambit, so maybe it's apropos that I mention it now. I think from Iran's vantage point, that deal was a win-win because they weren't required to make any major nuclear compromises, and we can go into more details about it, but it wasn't really it was a faux concession, in my opinion. But at the same time, they were getting a great deal of international credit for this faux concession, and they nearly were able to scuttle the building consensus against them at the Security Council.
Trudy Rubin.
Trudy Rubin from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Just a follow-up for Kareem. What do you think would have happened if that deal had been accepted? Do you think Iran would have backed out? It would have killed any hope for further sanctions? And a question to Cheng is, would the Turkish public at this point accept it if the Turkish government somehow were able to find its way back to at least tolerable relations with Israel?